Hello and welcome to tit-bits, the Gilbert and Sullivan podcast, which promises to offer a tiny topsy-turvy podcast of patter, paradox and plot. I'm your presenter Tom, and come along with me as I rummage through the trunks and trapdoors of Gilbert and Sullivan in this second edition called Partners in Rhyme, or How a Barrister and a Composer Accidentally Changed the Face of British Comic Opera. Now, if you were casting the roles of this partnership, you might not start with the words failed barrister meets serious composer, but that's exactly how it started. The failed barrister in question was William Schwenk Gilbert. Coming from a wealthy background, Gilbert had the promise of an Oxford education, but he turned this down to fight in the Crimea. But when he got to the front, the war had ended. He then moved into the civil service, in which he worked for a time in the education office. He hated this job so much that he bought his way into the law, and here is where our story of the failed barrister comes from. His first case in court was such a failure. The woman was so incensed by the loss, she took off a shoe and threw it at him. This was reported in the paper, and as a result of this negative publicity, he was ridiculed in the law community, and his career never recovered. It was only then that he turned his hand to his hobby of writing material for the stage. And through this material, he would take his revenge. So the law, the armed forces, and the clergy all came under attack of the Gilbertian satire and wit. And from these experiences, this is where we get the witty, sharp, and satirical fondness for topsy-turvy worlds and a very specific stage directions that we've come to know and love from William Schwenk Gilbert. Arthur Sullivan, however, grew up in slightly different surroundings. He came from a much humbler background. He was likened to Mozart and Beethoven, as he was able to compose from an early age. He joined the Chapel Royal, the monarch's own personal choir, where he was praised by Queen Victoria herself. From his time at the Chapel Royal, he sparked a lifelong love for serious church music. Sullivan is well known by many today of composing many great hymn tunes, such as Onward Christian Soldiers. As he progressed, he studied abroad in Leipzig, that great seat of musical learning, and returned to England later on to write serious music whilst also writing music for the theatre. During this time, a famous impresario by the name of Richard Doyley Cart decided to marry the talents of Gilbert and Sullivan together, and the rest, they say, is history. So let's talk about their first two collaborations. Their first collaboration together was Thespis, or The Gods Grown Old. The comic opera, even though only short, saw the gods on Olympus swap place with a troupe of actors. Sadly, Sullivan's score has been lost to time, with only Gilbert's libretto remaining. Sullivan scholars have recreated Thespis in their own way, but I don't think we'll ever see the true majesty of the original. Their second collaboration begins with a one-act opera called Trial by Jury from 1875. Gilbert wrote a courtroom farce with no spoken dialogue, and Sullivan set it to music, and the result was, well, unexpectedly brilliant. It was clever, tuneful, and crucially, it made money. And I promise that last part matters. Audience laughed, critics approved, and Sullivan thought, all right, maybe a little comic opera won't ruin my career. So, why did this failed barrister and serious composer actually function? Well, it was because Gilbert brought structure, worlds turned upside down, absurdity taken seriously, and rhymes so precise you could iron shirts on them. Sullivan brought melody, the emotional sincerity that meant audiences cared, even when the plot involved, say, pirates who were bad at paperwork. Together they wrote something new, comic opera with heart, absurdity presented with sincerity. The satire wrapped in a rich melodic structure. Before them, comic opera was mostly nonsense with catchy tunes, a little bit more burlesque. After them, it had purpose, shape, and I dare say, ambition. So, what's the Hull Savoyard connection? Here at the Hull Savoyards, we are always reminded that the company only exists because these two unlikely men just happen to click. They built a world we get to visit again and again, on stage, in rehearsal rooms, and in warm-up sessions where someone always starts singing A Wandering Minstrel I. So, that's how a barrister and a composer accidentally changed the face of comic opera, and how their quarrels, compromises, and creative brilliance gave us the world we celebrate today. Next week, we'll dive into more wonders of the topsy-turvy world of Gilbert and Sullivan. Until then, I've been Tom, and this has been your Tit-Bit for the week. And remember, Never quarrel over carpets. It ruins everything. I leave you now with the Hull Savoyards 2017 performance of Trial by Jury and the song When Our Good Friends Was Called to the Bar, as sung by the learned judge.
When I good friends was called to the bar, I'd an appetite fresh and hearty, for I was as many young barristers are, an impecunious party. I'd a swallowtail coat of a beautiful blue, a ring that looked like a ruby, a couple of shirts and a collar or two, and a ring that looked like a ruby.
A couple of shirts and a collar or two, and a ring that looked like a ruby.
In Westminster Hall I danced a dance like a semi-despondent fury, for I thought I never should hit on a chance of addressing a British jury. But I soon got tired of third-class journeys and dinners of bread and water, so I fell in love with a rich attorney's elderly, ugly daughter.
So he fell in love with a rich attorney's elderly, ugly daughter.
Attorney, he jumped for joy and replied to my fond professions. You shall reap the rewards of your pluck, my boy, at the Bailey and Middlesex sessions. You'll soon get used to her looks, said he, and a very nice girl you'll find her. She may very well pass for 43 in the dusk with a light behind her.
She may very well pass for 43 in the dusk with a light behind her.
Attorney was good as his word, the briefs came trooping gaily, and every day my voice was heard at the sessions or ancient Bailey. All thieves who could my fees afford relied on my orations, and many a burglar I've restored to his friends and his relations.
And many a burglar he's restored to his friends and his relations.
At length I became as rich as the Gurneys, an incubus then I thought her, so I threw over that rich attorney's elderly, ugly daughter. The rich attorney, my character high, tried vainly to disparage.
No!
Yes! And now, if you please, I'm ready to try this breach of promise of marriage.
And now, if you please, he's ready to try this breach of promise of marriage.
For now I'm a judge,
and a good judge too.
Yes, now I'm a judge,
and a good judge too.
Though all my law be fudge, yet I'll never, never budge, yet I'll live and die judge.
And a good judge too.
It was managed by a job,
and a good job too.
It was managed by a job,
and a good job too.
It is patent to the mob that my being made a knob was effected by a job.
And a good